بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. In the night of Ashura, first we offer our condolences to Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif and tell to our Imam that we share with you your suffering and your pain for the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam and all his beloved family members and companions and all the suffering that Ahlul Bayt went through afterwards. We talked about the four deputies of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and we said that first it was Osman ibn Sa'id al-Amri, and then after him was his son Muhammad ibn Uthman al-Amri, who were great companions of Imam Askari alayhi salam, and already strong recommendations were there about them as Wakil of Imam Askari. And Osman ibn Sa'id was also a close companion of Imam Hadi alayhi salam. And then when minor occultation started, Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and also as was already mentioned by Imam Askari, chose Osman ibn Sa'id as the first deputy. And then after him was Muhammad ibn Uthman, and the third was Abul Qasim Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti. We were talking about al-Nawbakhti last night. The time finished, and inshallah we want to continue our discussion about Nawbakhti, and then Ali ibn Muhammad as-Samuri, the fourth one. And in this way we can complete our discussion about the time of Ghaybat al-Sughra and enter into at the time of major occultation, al-Ghaybat al-Kubra. Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti, as we said, was known to be very, very intelligent person. And intelligent here means he had practical wisdom, not that he was just a person with high IQ. No, it means that he was very rational, very much in control of his emotions, and very wise, measuring everything, prioritizing well, and knowing what has to be preferred over other things, even if they are all in a sense important. We said that he was very careful about observing the situation and the dangers. He was observing taqiyya, and we mentioned some examples. Hussein ibn Ruh was the deputy of Imam from 305 till 326. So for about 21 years he was the deputy of Imam alayhi salam. And if you want also to write down, from 312 till 317 he was in prison. The Abbasid caliphs kept to come and go. They kept changing their wazir, their policies were changing. Sometimes he had good position with the caliph and with the government. Sometimes he was put in prison. But what is interesting, and I want you to think about it, and it is in line with what we discussed last Muharram, when last Muharram we were talking about Sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we said one of the Sunan, one of the general laws of Allah is that when He sends a messenger, He raises that messenger in the most central place of that nation. نَبْعَثَ فِي أُمِّهَا رَسُولًا. He sends messengers to Qura, to main place of those nations. We talked about it, and then we said, how, for example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Baqir alayhi salam, they remained in Medina despite all the problem. They could go to somewhere, being surrounded by Shia and, have more freedom, and maybe there could be lots of advantages for that. But they preferred to remain in the central hub of the Ummah and be active and connect with people, and if possible, as we see, they did, to teach non-Shia and Shia alike, etc. So we talked about this last Muharram. And what I want to mention is another example. From before Ghibat al-Sughra started, the Abbasids moved caliphate from Samarra to Baghdad. According to historians, it was in the year 221 that it moved from Samarra to Baghdad. 221. So these 4 deputies of Imam Mahdi, they were all in Baghdad. It is amazing that they were not in Karbala, they were not in Kufa, they were not in Basra. Although, for example, Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri is from Basra. He had a large family, very good mu'minin, I will talk about them, in Basra. But why all the 4 were in the capital? We had good, actually, presence of the Shia in the capital. And, we have later, for example, people like Sheikh Mufid in Baghdad. Why they didn't, say, let's be as far as possible from the Caliph and from his system and allies, because for sure they were monitoring everything more in the capital. It seems to me that this was a policy that try to be as much as possible in the central position, in the hubs. And even if you need to do taqiyya, but don't run away and go to remote places where there would be more freedom, but less influence. Because where there is Khalifa and capital, for sure, many people come and go, is crossroad. And if some Shia are clever, maybe they can somehow get into some positions, as we see that sometimes during these Nawab, some of the Shia reached high positions. So this is what I wanted to draw your attention, and inshallah think about it. I want to mention 2 things about Hussein ibn Ruh, inshallah, tonight, and then we go to Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri. One is his beautiful discussion with a person who asked him about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Some people said it's a munazara, but it seems that he asked question, and when he answered, he was not able to say anything. He gave such a comprehensive answer. The question was this: أخبرني عن الحسين أهو ولي الله. Was Hussein a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the friends and close people to Allah? He said, Na'am. Then he said, هل يجوز أن يسلط الله عز وجل عدوه على وليه? Is it possible that Allah then makes his enemy dominant over his wali, over his friend? How you say Yazid was an enemy of God and Hussein was wali of God, but then you see that Hussein was defeated. So this question, if someone is not good in aqaid, may not be able to answer, or at least it takes time to find out what to say. If you say Allah doesn't bother about his awliya, then you question his wisdom. If you say Allah bothers, so why then he didn't interfere? So na'uzubillah, Hussein was not his wali. So what is the answer? He gave very nice answer. The summary of his answer is about the relation that the prophets and messengers and awliyaullah had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very beautiful answer. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for guiding people, chose people from themselves. He chose human beings as his messengers. Because if he was sending non-human beings, they would not have related to, they would not accept. So he sent human beings, bashar. But they would say, okay, these are people like us, why we should believe in them? So he gave them mu'jiza, different types of mu'jiza, as we discuss in aqaid. But then, this is the key point here. But in order to leave some chance for test, one, in order to preserve the difference between them and our Lord, and to show their humility and their dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they went through the same challenges that other people went through. So they had mu'jiza, but they become ill. They die. They can be killed. They can be oppressed. It's a very beautiful point. Let me read for you just few lines of this. I only mention few lines. He says, after talking about mu'jiza, then he says, كان من تقدير الله جل جلاله ولطفه بعباده وحكمته. It was a requirement of his wisdom and his favor upon his servants and his grace, أن جعل أنبياءه مع هذه المعجزات في حال غالبين وأخرى مغلوبين. He made his prophets, despite these miracles, sometimes dominant, sometimes others were dominant. They were defeated. في حال قاهرين وأخرى مقهورين. Sometimes victorious, sometimes defeated. ولو جعلهم عز وجل في جميع أحوالهم غالبين وقاهرين ولم يبتلهم ولم يمتحنهم لاتخذهم الناس آلهة من دون الله. If Allah had kept them always victorious, always winning, then people would have taken them as their Lord. وَلَمَا عُرِفَ, the second reason, لَمَا عُرِفَ فَضْلُ صَبْرِهِمْ عَلَى الْبَلَاءِ, and also the merit of their patience with calamities was not known. One of the things that we really much admire in the prophets and messengers of awliyaullah is that how much they were patient. They had challenges greater than us, suffering greater than us, but they were patient. And this is how we can learn. But if they had no challenge, no problem, then this side of them was remaining unknown. وَلَكِنَّهُ جَعَلَ أَحْوَالَهُمْ فِي ذَلِكَ كَأَحْوَالِ غَيْرِهِمْ. Allah made their conditions like conditions of ordinary people. لِيَكُونُوا فِي حَالِ الْمِحْنَةِ وَالْبَلَاءِ صَابِرِينَ. So that when there is difficulty, they are patient. وَفِي حَالِ الْعَافِيَةِ وَالظُّهُورِ عَلَى الْأَعْدَاءِ شَاكِرِينَ. And when there is afiyah, there is ease, and they are dominant over enemies, they are grateful. وَيَكُونُوا فِي جَمِيعِ أَحْوَالِهِمْ مُتَوَاضِعِينَ. And in all circumstances, they remain humble. غَيْرَ شَامِخِينَ وَلَا مُتَجَبِّرِينَ. They don't become arrogant. وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْعِبَادُ أَنَّ لَهُمْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّلَامُ إِلَهًا. And people know that these people have themselves the same Lord as us. هُوَ خَالِقُهُمْ وَمُدَبِّرُهُمْ فَيَعْبُدُونَ وَيُطِيعُوا رَسُولَهُ. So then people worship Allah and obey the Prophet, not that they worship prophets. So after he gave this answer, that person was speechless. Now it becomes very clear that how Imam Hussein can be Waliullah and still he would be killed by an enemy of Allah. It's quite possible. It's the sunnah of Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not interfere miraculously always to stop his awliya being oppressed or being killed, etc. This is one thing I wanted to share with you, and if you want this, you find it in our original sources, but also in a contemporary book in Hayatul Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif by Baqir Sharif al-Qurashi, which is online. Also you can find this story. The second thing that actually takes time is about the problem of ghulat, zealots, people who were exaggerating. And in the time of Imams alayhimus salam, before Ghaybat al-Sughra and during Ghaybat al-Sughra and afterwards, we have had people who claim to be Shia, but they were exaggerating. The late Sheikh Khurra Amili, you know Sheikh Khurra Amili, the one who has compiled Wasa'il al-Shia and many books. He has a book called Ithbatul Hudat. Ithbatul Hudat. Of course, if we do waqf, we say Ithbatul Huda, but it's Hudat, the plural for Hadi. He brings arguments and hadith for imama of all the imams. So he talks about imama of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif and brings arguments and hadith about his imama, and then after that he has a chapter. The title of chapter is Ibtalul Ghuluv Warradd ala al-Ghulat, defeating Ghuluv. Ghuluv means to exaggerate, to say that imams had some kind of lordship, some kind of deity. So this chapter is about this refutation of the Ghuluv and the people who were exaggerating. And he mentions 110 hadiths here. 110 hadiths. Because unfortunately there were several people that in the time of Ghaybat al-Sughra, they tried to introduce heretical ideas, and sometimes they had some following. Not majority of Shia, but unfortunately they had some following, and sometimes was getting difficult. But in the time of the presence of imams, of course it was easier. In the time of Ghayba, they thought because imam is in the occultation, they could take advantage and they could misguide the Shia. And they themselves also were Shia, but unfortunately sometimes they had love for dunya, for position, out of jealousy, as we will explain, for example. They introduced these ideas. But Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, through his deputies, dealt with these cases. So one person that I want to mention, and perhaps he is the most influential person and whose case was very severe, is Muhammad ibn Ali Ash-Shalmaghani. Ash-Shalmaghani was a very learned Shia scholar. He was an alim, and he had many books. And actually, some of his books are very good books. Even later, when they asked Hussein ibn Ruh, what should we do with his books? You know, we have many of his books in our houses. And he said to do what Imam alayhi salam had told about Ibn Fadlal, that we had, another case, in the case of Fatahis, that they first started with right aqidah and then they deviated. So Imam of that time said, خُذُوا مَا رَوَوْا وَذَرُوا مَا رَأَوْا. Whatever they have narrated, take it. Whatever was their own opinion, leave it. Because at least those people were honest in narrating hadith, but their opinions were wrong. In the case of this person, no, this person had more problems, but he said, Hussein ibn Ruh, referring to that case, the books that he has written before change, it's okay. But after change, no. And they were checking actually more his books, and I will mention some stories. So he was a very learned person. He had many books, and according to some sources, he was introduced by Hussein ibn Ruh himself as a wakil for him, as a kind of person that he has trust in. And in particular, he asked him to preach, to do tabligh with the Bastam family. Bastam were a large family in Baghdad. And Hussein ibn Ruh, according to some sources say no, Hussein ibn Ruh didn't recommend him, some say he recommended him, had introduced him, and he was little by little establishing himself. But two problems were there. One, he was unfortunately suffering from pride, because he was very knowledgeable, he was very clever, and also so that people, believe in him, people follow him. He had, good ability to convince people. And the second thing was he was jealous towards Hussein ibn Ruh. So, although he had a very good position among the Shia, and he was, close even to Imam Askari, but unfortunately it changed. This is why I sometimes say, that we should never think of our history as a guarantee for future. Sometimes I say in this way to make it very, easy to remember. I said, even if you shake hand with Jibreel today, of course no one is doing this, but suppose if you are able to shake hand with Jibreel today, tomorrow you have to be worried. And every decision, every choice you make, you have to be very careful. You cannot say, how can a person who shakes hand with Jibreel make mistake? Allah is going to protect me. No. And Allah is so kind that would not deprive you today of what you deserve because of mistake that you are going to do tomorrow. So if you are really today deserving to meet Jibreel, you will meet Jibreel today. And if tomorrow you make mistake, then tomorrow you would receive your own treatment according to what you deserve tomorrow. Imams the same. Maybe a person was very close to Imam. Maybe Imam even gave them some positions because they were good people at that time. But human beings can change. So, even to be chosen by Imam does not guarantee that forever this person is going to be good. We have people that were appointed by Imam Ali, later they changed. We have, ashab of Imams, wakils of Imam. We have, wukala of Imam Qadim alayhi salam, who later changed. Waqif were people who were wakil of Imam Kadhim, and when Imam Kadhim died, they didn't want to give the money to Imam Raza alayhi salam, and they denied Imam Raza alayhi salam. They became seveners. This person was a great scholar, was a companion of Imam Askari alayhi salam, close relation with the Nawab of Imam, but unfortunately, because of pride and because of jealousy, he changed. And what he was doing was, he was little by little introducing wrong ideas. I don't know if he himself also was more and more deviating, because I think many times it's like this, that they become worse. Sometimes they have wrong ideas that they don't express. They need for a stronger position to say their ideas. But many times also this becomes worse and worse. So it's not that the first day they had everything in their mind. So they used him as a guide, but unfortunately he was misguiding them. It is said that he was saying his ideas to people of Bastam, for example, and saying this is from Hussein ibn Ruh, and confusing them. And it is very interesting that it is said the first person who reported this to Hussein ibn Ruh was a woman called Kulthum. And I am not sure, is it the same Kulthum who was daughter of the second Na'ib of Imam? Because the second Na'ib of Imam, Muhammad ibn Uthman, had a very great daughter called Kulthum. And maybe this is the same Kulthum or another Kulthum. Anyway, she was a person who was secretly doing tabligh with Bastam and was reporting to Hussein ibn Ruh. She sensed something is going wrong. So she was the first person to notify Hussein ibn Ruh. And then Hussein ibn Ruh checked and saw, yes, there are problems. And he was little by little adding, and for example, he was introducing the idea of reincarnation, the idea of hulul. He said Allah comes and stays in reincarnate in some people. And even he says, that Allah comes to me and I am Ruhul Quds. First he said, I am Bab of Imam Mahdi, I am the, but little by little it increased. Even he was, for example, saying that Prophet and Imam, he introduced also the idea of tanasukh. The soul of a person comes to another person. And he was saying that Rasulullah, for example, has come to this person, Imam Ali to this person. And also, little by little, he added to the problems, and he was saying that some of the rulings of Sharia are not needed. He was, spreading some kind of ibahiyya, that you can do everything. Even there are very wrong ideas that mention some books, about, for example, marrying, your own maharim, and that the light of Fadil has to go into Mafdhul, someone who is higher, can, with marriage, and relation, give the light to the other person. Very corrupt ideas he was spreading. So what happened was that because also Hussein ibn Ruh was in prison, he wanted to take advantage, but Alhamdulillah, a tawqi came from Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and then Hussein ibn Ruh sent out this tawqi to the Shia, although beforehand he was, first informing some of people who were close to him, his family members, then the other Shia, but then this tawqi almost finished, at least for the majority of the Shia, the danger, although this person was not stopping, as I will explain. So the Tawqi is as follows. إن محمد بن علي المعروف بالشلمغاني وهو ممن عجل الله له النقمة ولا أمهله. Muhammad ibn Ali, who is known as Shalmaghani, and he's one of the people that may Allah hasten his niqmah for him. Niqmah is opposite to ni'mah. It's like a punishment. وَلَا أَمْهَلَهُ. May Allah not give him time and opportunity to continue. قَدْ ارْتَدَّ عَنِ الْإِسْلَامِ وَفَارَقَهُ وَأَلْحَدَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ. He has gone out of Islam. وَادَّعَى مَا كَفَرَ مَعَهُ بِالْخَالِقِ. With what he claims, he has showed disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Imam said, إننا قد برئنا إلى الله تعالى وإلى رسوله وآله صلوات الله وسلامه ورحمته وبركاته عليهم بمنه ولعناه. With the minna of Allah, we have disassociated ourselves from him and we curse him. Curse means disassociation and separating your camp from someone. And Imam says, people also should be careful about him. And he says, إِنَّا مِنَ التَّوَقِّي وَالْمُحَاضَرَةِ مِنْهِ عَلَى مَا كُنَّا عَلَيْهِ مِمَّنْ تَقَدَّمَهُ مِنْ نُظَرَائِهِ. Now we have the same policy of distancing and being very precautious about him as we did with people who were similar to him in the past. مِنَ الشَّرِيعِ. There was a person who was similar. Shari'i, or some sources say Sari'i, he was a deviant person. وَالنُّمَيْرِ وَالْهِلَالِ وَالْبَلَالِ وَغَيْرِهِمْ. So there were a few other people. Imam says now we have the same policy towards him like his predecessors. And he says that وَعَادَةُ اللَّهِ جَلَّ ثَنَاؤُهُ مَعَ ذَلِكَ قَبْلَهُ وَبَعْدَهُ عِنْدَنَا جَمِيلَةٌ وَبِهِ نَثِقٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's behavior is beautiful and we have our trust in him. We إِيَّاهُ نَسْتَعِينُ. We ask him for help. Anyway, this was sent out from prison and people came to know. And then what happened was he had to also run away to Mosul. For 2-3 years he was in Mosul, but then secretly came back to Baghdad. Anyway, there were lots of difficulties with him, and sometimes he managed even to put his own people inside the palace and inside the government. And for example, one of his supporters at one point became very high position, and like the second person of the Khilafah, and very much causing problem. But Alhamdulillah, with the careful attitude of Hussein ibn Ruh and with the tawqi of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, the Shia were saved, and also the government later became against him because they knew that both Shia and Sunni are against these ideas. So they arrested him, and he denied his ideas. He didn't say I don't have such. He didn't say I have such ideas. He said no, I don't have any non-orthodox ideas. But they brought some witnesses, and finally they said he has to be executed. And he said, if you kill me, azab will come. In few days azab will come. But the caliph didn't pay attention and they executed him. He said, between 3 to 9 days azab will come and destroy you. So in the year 323 he was killed, Shalmaghani. So what I wanted to learn from this story is that first a warning for ourselves that you can be very learned, you can have history of being a companion of Imam, being very close to the deputy of Imam, but if you are not careful, you can deviate. We have to be always careful. The second thing is that especially if we make mistake about religion. Sometimes I have a personal problem, na'udhu billah, I don't observe taqwa requirements for my personal life. Privately, secretly, I have another type of life. I've committed sins, etc. This is very, very bad. Very, very bad. I don't want to underestimate that. But much worse than that is when it comes to aqidah of people, when it comes to misguiding people or to claim a position that you don't have. This is much worse. For example, I don't have permission from Marja. I say I am Wakil of Marja. I have permission from Marja. Let alone to say that I have connection with Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu. Unfortunately, still today we suffer in some parts of our community from people who claim very cleverly, sometimes they don't say that we have relation, but in dream this was told me, this message was sent to me, and still they unfortunately have some following, and they create problems in the community. So such things I don't think would remain without punishment even in dunya. Maybe if someone has some personal sinful life, maybe it would be covered. But if you do something against Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif and claim a position that you don't have, and you damage the aqidah of people and misuse the trust of people, normally in dunya also this will be disclosed, because this is too bad and too satanic, and it would normally even in dunya would be known to people. And normally these things lead to bad things, worse things. Maybe if you first do it with iman, but with weakness. You think this is good for me, but little by little, ثُمَّ كَانَ عَاقِبَةَ الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا السُّوءَ أَنْ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ. Then they lose their iman totally, and some of them they become against imams. Some of them deny the whole school of Ahlul Bayt. It happens. So we have to be very careful. Another thing is that how important is the role of these people like Hussein ibn Ruh in the time of Ghaybat al-Sughra, and our Maraji and our great scholars and the body of ulama. Sometimes we have one person, sometimes we have our hawzas. Our hawzas as a whole are also institutions that function as a kind of scientific body for us to guide us. So it's very important that we should encourage people to get more connected to the marja'iyya and to the hawzas which are under maraji and our ulama and our main tradition, our mainstream is very important. If we distance ourselves for any reason, then we can become easily prey of shaitan and satanic people. Okay, now let's go to Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri, because I want to finish this discussion today about these four Nawab. So after Hussein ibn Ruh passed away, for 3 years we have the fourth Naib of Imam, from 326 till 329, only 3 years. And it is said that this was one of the most difficult times, and Abbasid and in these 3 years were very, very much pressurizing the Shia and the Naib of Imam. And it is said that on the surface, of course, Allah has His own plan, but on the surface, one reason for not continuing this institution was because it was no longer possible to have someone known to be Wakil of Imam, General Deputy of Imam, Naib, Arm of Imam, who is specifically appointed by Imam. Although everything works together, as I said, because anyway, this had to be a transition from time of presence to the Ghaibat Kubra. This could not last forever. This was a training period, and on the surface, what made this finish was great pressure of the Abbasids. So it lasted only 3 years, and in 329, in the months of Sha'ban, he passed away. He is from Summar, or some have said Saymar, which is a village, some villages near Basra. So he was from Basra, although he lived in these, his grave is in Baghdad. He died in Baghdad, but originally he is from Basra, and he is from very reliable family, very nice Shia family, pious, who had lots of land, and they made some of their income. Actually, some people I wrote that they say half of their properties they made waqf for Imam Askari alayhi salam, and they used to send money to Imam Askari alayhi salam. Very nice family. And one of the family members of Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri was Ali ibn Muhammad Ziyad or Zayyad, and he had a book, Al-Awsiya, to prove the Imamah of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faraj Sharif. Very religious family. And this Ali ibn Muhammad, who had this book, was Wakil of Imam Hadi and Imam Askari. So, Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri from Basra, from such family, he became the fourth Naib of Imam Mahdi in 326. And it is said that Ali ibn Muhammad, before, when Imam Askari was alive, had some communication with Imam Askari, and there's a case that Imam Askari had warned them about a fitna which is going to happen. So he had some relation with Imam Askari as well. 6 days before he passed away, he received a message from Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and Imam Mahdi informed him about his death. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya Ali ibn Muhammad as-Samuri, A'zamallahu ajra ikhwanika feek. May Allah make the reward of your brothers in you great. Means your brothers are going to lose you, and they're going to be mourning for you. This was a way to inform him about his death. فَإِنَّكَ مَيَّتٌ مَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ سِتَّةَ أَيَّامٍ. Within 6 days, you are going to die. فَأَجْمِعْ أَمْرَكَ. So prepare yourself. Whatever you want to do, do it. وَلَا تُوسِ إِلَىٰ أَحَدٍ يَقُومُ مَقَامَكَ بَعْدَ وَفَاتِكَ. And don't give wasiyah to anyone to take over your position. You are the last deputy, and don't advise anyone else. فَقَدْ وَقَعَتِ الْغَيْبَةُ التَّامَّةُ. The complete ghaiba has started. So we are entering the next stage, which is major occultation. فَلَا ظُهُورَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى ذِكْرُهُ. There would be no zuhur except when Allah gives permission. وَذَلِكَ بَعْدَ طُولِ الْأَمَدِ وَقَسْوَةِ الْقُلُوبِ. And this would be after a long time, and after some hearts become hard. They would maybe doubt, they would lose their iman. So it's not going to be a matter of few years. وَامْتِلَاءِ الْأَرْضِ جَوْرًا. When the earth will be filled with injustice. وَسَيَأْتِي لَشِيعَةِ مَنْ يَدَّعِ الْمُشَاهَدَةِ. Some people would come to my Shia and would claim that they have seen me, or the time of ghaibah has finished. Because this sentence has been interpreted, and there are lots of things about here. Maybe tomorrow I will mention a little bit about the interpretations of this sentence. But basically, we can say that there are people who claim that Imam Mahdi is coming, or we have seen him. He has given us this message that Zuhur is happening this time, etc. And Imam says, ألا فمن ادعى المشاهدة قبل خروج السفيان والسيحة فهو كذاب مفتر. Whoever claims mushahada before Sufyani comes and before that sayha, that cry is heard, is a liar. This seems that mushahada means end of ghaibah, because al-ghaibah wal-mushahada, these are two things that use in contrast with each other. We had in that hadith of Imam Zain al-Abidin, صارت الغيبة عندهم بمنزلة المشاهدة. Not that no one can see Imam Mahdi, like Sayyid ibn Tawus, for example, or Bahr al-Ulum. We will talk about it a little bit tomorrow, inshallah. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. So, Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samuri realized that in 6 days he has to finish everything, prepare everything for his departure. And he informed the people who were in touch with him, those who were his agents, he informed them about this tawqi. And also, after 6 days, on the 6th day, some people who were around him, his wukala, they asked him, now what should we do? What is going to happen? He said, لِلَّهِ أَمْرٌ هُوَ بَالِغُهُ. Allah has a command or has an affair that he himself would complete it, and he didn't make a wasiyah to anyone and said that it's finishing. So this was the last thing that was heard from him. So this marked his demise, marked a new stage, now the time of Ghaybat al-Sughra, an ability of connecting to Imam at least through a person, not directly, at least through a person, finished. So with the martyrdom of Imam Askari, the time of hudur, of hujjaj of Allah, messengers and imams, finished. With departure of Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samari, time of Ghaybat al-Sughra finished, and now this era started of Ghaybat al-Kubra. And inshallah, from tomorrow we will talk about who are the helpers of Imam Hussein and Imam Mahdi in the time of Ghaybat al-Kubra. Tonight we remember Hazrat Ali Asghar, and I would like to get some blessing from remembering Hazrat Ali Asghar, someone that despite his very little age and young age has great respect, and our great ulama and maraji were considering him as one of those who are Babul Hawaij. And it is said that Ayatollah Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Ha'iri, who refounded the Hawza of Qom, who was a teacher of Imam Khomeini, whenever he had some important hajat, was doing tawassul to Hazrat Ali Asghar. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. The late Sayyid ibn Tawus in Al-Luhuf writes, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْحُسَيْنُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامَ مَصَارِعَ فِتْيَانِهِ وَأَحِبَّتِهِ عزم على لقاء القوم بمهجته. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam saw that his companions and his beloved family members have been killed, got ready to go towards the enemies. At that time he made this call: هل من ضاب يضب عن حرم رسول الله؟ هل من موحد يخاف الله فينا؟ هل من مغيث يرجو الله بإغاثتنا؟ هل من معين يرجو ما عند الله في إعانتنا? So he made it very clear that he has no helper and wanted to offer this opportunity to anyone who wanted to help the Prophet and the family of the Prophet, so that they would receive mercy from Allah. Sayyid ibn Tawus says, فَارْتَفَعَتْ أَصْوَاتُ النِّسَاءِ بِالْعَبِيلِ. When the ladies heard this cry of loneliness of Abu Abdullah, their cry went high, and Imam heard it. فَتَقَدَّمَ إِلَى بَابِ الْخَيْمَةِ. Imam went towards the tent of family of Ahlul Bayt. وقال لزينب ناوليني ولدي الصغير حتى أودعه. According to some other versions, at that time Ali Asghar also was crying very hard. Maybe Imam had heard the cry of Ali Asghar. So Imam said, "Oh Zainab, please bring me my little child, hatta uwadda'a, so that I pay farewell to him, I see him for the last time." فأخذه وأومأ إليه ليقبله. When Imam took Ali Asghar in his hands and wanted to kiss him, فرماه حرملة بن الكاهل الأسدي لعنه الله تعالى بسهم فوقع في نهره. Harmala saw Ali Asghar in the hand of Hussein and thought this is the best time to bring pain to Hussein. So he had prepared a special arrow with 3 heads for Hussein, but thought that it would not be less vicious if I kill his Ali Asghar. So he shooted his arrow towards Ali Asghar. فَوَقَعَ فِي نَحْرِهِ. And this hit the neck of Ali Asghar. And the neck of the baby was so soft and these arrows were so bad that Sayyid ibn Tawus says, فَذَبِحَهُ. It slaughtered Ali Asghar. فقال لزينب خذي. The Imam said, oh Zainab, take this back. ثم تلقى الدم بكفي. Then Imam took with both hands the blood of Ali Asghar. فلما امتلأت رمى بالدم نحو السماء. When his both hands were filled with the blood of Ali Asghar, he threw the blood towards the sky and said, هون علي ما نزل بي أنه بعين الله. What makes it tolerable for me is that Allah is watching this and everything happens under His sight. قال الباقر عليه السلام فلم يسقط من ذلك الدم قطرة إلى الأرض. Imam Baqir, according to what Sayyid ibn Tawus said that no single drop of that blood came down. Allah accepted this offer of Abu Abdullah. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.